And good morning. All sorts of fun things going on. Of course, today is, you can smell it. Today is potluck. If you did not bring anything, please stick around anyhow. There are some tasty victuals back there for those of us who remember the word. I had to explain it to a younger person what a victual was a while back. But that's what Beverly Hills used to call them. You know, a victual, tasty victual. There's even a King James verse, I think it says tasty victuals. I do. I think there is. Anyway, so there's all sorts of tasty food, all sorts of food. Please stay, fellowship. There should be more than enough food, and please join us. And then, I don't have much to say right now. Anybody else?
I thought about the 9/11 community service tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the fire station.
Okay, I've been to one of those before. It's it's something to think about. So that's the 9/11 memorial at the fire station, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Firehouse.
Tomorrow is a day of kindness, so think of something kind to do for somebody else.
That's a good one. The day of kindness, for those who may not have heard. Tomorrow, day of kindness. And remember, 9/11 is still, I think, a worthy thing to do. People forget so quick. Anything else that needs to be announced? Well then, let us take a moment in time here to worship, celebrate, and sing praises to God.
Hello, everyone. They say sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. Right now I'm losing bad. Stood on this stage night after night, reminding the broken it'll be alright. Right now I just can't. It's easy to sing when there's nothing to bring me down. What will I say when I'm held to the flame like I am right now? I know you're able and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. It takes just a little faith to move a mountain. Good thing, a little faith is all I have. God, when you choose to leave mountains unmovable, give me the strength to be able to sing. It is well with my soul. I know you're able and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. I know the sorrow and I know the hurt will all go away if you just say the word. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone.
You've been faithful, you've been good all my days. Jesus, I will cling to you, come what may.
'Cause I know you're able, I know you can. I know you're able and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't,
my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul.
Please have a seat.
We have a number of people in our congregation that need prayer. And I was looking at my Bible this week, and I read the part that said that we were adopted as children of God. Do you know that being the child of God gives us an amazing amount of power? And we were praying for pastors this morning, and as I named all of the ones that we know of, and we have a little book that we go through, I recognize that as Christians, we have so much power in this world. We can change things if we want to. We can change through prayer. I listen to that song and I think, sometimes I ask God, why did this happen? Why didn't you do this? And every once in a while I get a little nudge and he says to me, well, what did you do? And I remember my part. Bow your heads with me. We know you're able, Lord. We know you can. We know you do. And sometimes you just pass the wand to us and say, it's your turn. And I pray, Lord, that as we come together, we have a number of people in our congregation who need prayer and who pray for each other. And I thank you for that. But Lord, help us to remember that we are children of the living God. And we can and we should, and you will bless us for it. Thank you so much for this time together. Thank you for our pastor, for the music people, for people who make sure that we can see the words up on a screen, people who come every Sunday, who love each other, who pray for each other, who care for each other. We hand this day to you, Lord. Don't let us embarrass you in it. Don't let us disappoint you. And we ask this in your name. Amen.
If you'd like, please stand with us.
Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free. Oh, he's free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I
chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am.
Whom the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
Above all powers, above all kings, above all nature and all created things, above all wisdom and all the ways of man. You were here before the world began. Above all kingdoms, above all thrones, above all wonders the world has ever known, above all wealth and treasures of the earth, there's no way to measure what you're worth. Crucified, lay behind a stone, you live to die, rejected and alone, like a rose trampled on the ground. You took the fall, thought of me above all. Above all powers, above all kings, above all nature and all created things, above all wisdom in all the ways of man. You were here before the world began. Above all kingdoms, above all thrones, above all wonders the world has ever known, above all wealth and treasures of the earth, there's no way to measure what you're worth. Crucified, lay behind a stone, you live to die, rejected and alone, like a rose trampled on the ground. You took the fall, thought of me above all, like a rose trampled on the ground. You took the fall, thought of me above all. Please have a seat.
All right, a few more things I wanted to mention. First, there was a intermission in our internet. I'm not sure what happened there. So those watching from home or watching this later, there might be a blank spot. Maybe I'll try to cut it out later. I don't know. But it's not you. It's somewhere over here. But it seems to be working now. Next is Tuesday is the first official MOPS meeting in the church, Tuesday at 10 o'clock. This has been the Mothers of Preschoolers ministry. Many, 5, 6, how many are signed up now? So a lot of people like the idea of coming here, hanging out for a little bit, having someone watch their kids and getting a respite, a moment of peace to have fellowship with other adults. And you don't think about it, but when you're raising toddlers and preschoolers, you could go for hours and hours and hours without talking to anybody of adult level, In fact, I used to work 12, 13-hour days, plus commuting. So that was a long haul on top, and of course, if you come home after a 12, 13-hour day, how much do you want to talk, right? But clearly, it's a great thing. Mothers are enjoying it. It's going to be our big focus again this year, as it was last year. Of course, that's where the garden came from and other things like that. So MOPS this Tuesday, 10 o'clock. And then translations of Bibles. Generally, I use the NIV. That's what I show on the screen. I just consider it very readable, very common English. I consider the best study would be to compare translations. Well, today, my sermon is not an NIV, but the overheads are. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. One is this is an interesting exercise in mental agility and translation comparison. And really, most of it is one says he went to a lake, another one says there was a lake he went to, and you'll be able to see that. Another option is I completely messed up last night and didn't notice till it was too late. Pick which one you like best. I like to think, we're learning about translations and mental acuity, agility. So now last week, we started and we looked at the very first chapter of the book of Proverbs. And it was a cry. It was a father to his son about finding wisdom, getting wisdom, the price of wisdom. It should be bought. It should be focused upon. And as we looked at many things because it affects your life. Well, I didn't want to spend too much time. I kind of wanted to just whet people's appetites and read it on your own, the book of Proverbs. But I did mention the first 9 chapters are this dialogue on why wisdom is important, what wisdom is good for, what it's used for. Then once you hit chapter 10, most of it is little sayings. Pithy is sometimes a word used to describe these little sayings. And so just starting there, it says, in fact, the Oxford Language Dictionary, which some search engine uses, Microsoft, I think, short, pithy sayings in general use, starting a general truth or piece of advice. That's a proverb. A general truth or piece of advice. I'm saying these ones particularly maybe a notch above that since they're in the Word of God, but I'll read some compared to your own findings. We went over this one last week, and again, it may look a little bit different from what I'm about to read. I blame you. Yeah. Well, there's only 2 of us at home, and it couldn't have been me. Okay. All right. I have no idea what translation I grabbed. I thought I could. It wasn't NIV. Proverbs, we went to look at this one last week. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom or knowledge. Fools despise wisdom. They despise discipline. And it's talking about a right way and a wrong way to do anything. And discipline isn't always just being punished. If a person has a disciplined mind, what are we saying? Yeah, they're good. They got it balanced out. If a person, disciplined in their exercising, well, it usually means they're going to look like they exercise a lot. You don't usually say that about someone of more of a rounded shape. Oh, that guy's a disciplined athlete. You don't generally say that unless it's like professional eating, sumo wrestling. There's some things that work. And this is how it starts. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to jump around between a lot of different proverbs because they are short. I'm just going to kind of go pick some ones I highlighted throughout the entire book of Proverbs. And follow me along. So Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Very commonly quoted passage. Now, there's only two things I want to highlight here. First one is trust in the Lord with all your heart. Not your intellect necessarily. The Bible always uses this word heart. And then, do not rely on your own understanding. Now, some people think, well, see, there you go. It's a blind faith. It doesn't make sense. There is no rationality to it. You just have to do what it says. Oh, I don't think that's what it's saying at all. In fact, there's quite a few verses that tell you to think, to reason. Come, let us reason and work these things out. It's not blind faith. So look at it in a regular way. A teacher, an instructor, a master craftsman can teach you things. Are you going to understand every principle from the get-go? No. In fact, you may come home from a class or work or something else like, I have no idea what the guy was talking about. Right? And you have to make a decision here. You can either decide, well, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm going to quit, or I'm going to trust he knows what he's talking about and keep learning from him. That's not blind faith. But that is a faith in the person teaching you knows what they're doing. Many people have a bad day the first day at work, and I think to their own harm, they don't return. In fact, there's free information. I tell this to younger people all the time. A paycheck is better than no paycheck. Trust me, I know. I've tried it both ways. And a paycheck. Now, does that mean you have to have a miserable job all your life? No. It means start looking for another job, but keep the old one till you get the new one. A paycheck, but that's free. Free mic stuff. Free mic stuff. So again, you can't wrap your round around every precept, everything, every understanding, but it doesn't mean you won't be able to understand what they're teaching, what they're trying to instruct. Right? And so here's one. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. Why? Because you're at a particular place of not understanding everything. It doesn't necessarily imply you just have to go with the flow. Well, they said it's true, it must be true. You can look into it, you can research it, you can, apply your intellect to it. I may not qualify, but many a minister are quite scholarly in some of their endeavors. They think about things. And then I want to add that verse with the next one from the following chapter, which is Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. Guard your heart above all else, or above all else, guard your heart, for it is the source of life. And this goes back to the way the Bible looks at the heart. It's not just the intellect is here, the emotions are here. And we know, just being humans, that it ain't that simple. Because, your heart can tell you what to think. And sometimes you try to tell think with your heart and vice versa. And there's a frustration, you can have all these side effects from your emotions and your thoughts. You can have chills running up and down your spine. You can have chills visible in your flesh, goosebumps, right? Butterflies in your stomach. When we talk about those breakup songs from the days, music when music made sense, heartaches, heartbreaks. Well, it's not an intellectual disaster. It hurts here. And so, even in our modern understanding, we understand that the heart, and what we mean by that is the center of emotion, is a powerful center of our being. Here's the way one person wrote it. The heart is used in Scripture, this was from J. Stowell, the heart is used in Scripture as the most comprehensive term for the authentic person, where you live. That's who you really are. It is the part of our being where we desire, deliberate, and decide. It has been described as a place of consciousness and decisive spiritual activity. The comprehensive term for the person as a whole, his feelings, his desires, his passions, his thoughts, understanding, and will, the center of a person. And it adds, the place which God turns. God looks at the heart. Other people may look at actions or deeds on the outside, and that's what you see when someone's coming down the street. Someone you meet, those are the first things you notice. But that's not who the person really is. No, it's much deeper, much more internal. It's a matter of the heart. And we had a conversation yesterday, I think it was, and we were talking about church practices. One church does this, one church does that. And again, I'm not, some things I think are weird. Some things I think, okay, if you want to do it that way, fine. You have a few more candles and some robes, okay. You have less candles and robes, whatever. We're just talking about different things. And it's funny because oftentimes people will tell me their favorites, almost automatically. What does your church do on baptism? Because my church did it this way. And they're very big on that. Or, what translation do you use? And today, just about any one as far as I can tell. But what translation? And that's very important for some people. They tell me their favorites. But these are outward Christian practices. Wouldn't it be funny that's all we talk about when God's not concerned about that half as much as what's going on inside of us? And here's one of those verses again about the heart. Here's a fun one. Proverbs 9:8. Do not rebuke a mocker, or he will hate you. Rebuke the wise, and he will love you. Now, what's happening here is you have some information, and it's a rebuke. You're basically telling something, they're doing something wrong, they're thinking something wrong, they got the facts wrong, you're trying to straighten them out. It's a rebuke. And do you hand me a tissue? Thank you. Do not rebuke a mocker, he will hate you. So you have technically the same information. You're trying to help someone, correct them, instruct them. Same information, two completely different outcomes, right? The mocker will hate you, rebuke the wise, and he will love you. Even though this stuff's written down 1,000 years before Christ, give or take a couple years, just as true today as it was then. Why? Because I've seen all these things. And if I want to be honest, probably done both of these things on each side of this scale. What happens? You rebuke someone and they will hate you for it. They don't want to hear your instructions. They don't want to hear what you got to say. I think about this when raising kids. I think about this when working with coworkers. And you're trying to help someone. And they'll say things like, I know what I'm doing. And they say it in a belligerent tone. Who are you to tell me? You're not so... And now they're attacking you, right? That happens. Well, that is this mocker will hate you. But you know what else can happen? Someone will say, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. Thank you. Or even, that's an interesting way of looking at that. I need to check into that. There's the wise man who thanks you, who loves you for trying to help him, because they realize they don't know everything. They realize there's other sides to the coin, And then there's the one who automatically knows everything. You can't teach them anything. Same information, two completely different outcomes. And there is a fundamental thing that can come from this which can help you in your life. Not just trying to be the guy who learns. Of course, that's the point. But there's a secondary thing. In this life, when you try to instruct a loved one, a family member, a coworker, you want to help them, and they are belligerent, it hurts. It hurts that you can't help them. It hurts that they're retaliatory and their words and all these things hurt. Well, you need to realize, and this is what helps, that's the way some folks are. And you can keep going, why? But the reality is, or how dare they say this, or how dare they think this? The reality is, that's the way some people are. But you want what's better for them. You love them. You care for them. You have to watch them still meander through life, making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And I'm only suggesting this is a bit of peace, knowing that they're out there, they are continuous in their actions, and there's a part where you can understand that some people are in this set. Now, could they change someday? Great. But just a bit of peace knowing that it's not just them. They're out there. Everyone nods their head a lot when I talk about these things. They're out there. Other people have them in their families too. Friends probably done it themselves some time or two. And it helps you understand that it's not always going to go your way. You're not always going to be able to help somebody because they're not going to listen. And that can let you off the hook, because love still wants you to try. Love still wants you to, and I'm not saying you don't keep an eye on them at a distance. You can't come back and try it later, but you just don't have to fret each and every moment or have the constant friction with them because they're just not going to listen. It's the way it is. And then this one's actually just kind of interesting for a different idea, because it's very similar to a verse we already read, Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Fear of the Lord, beginning of wisdom, knowledge, understanding of the Holy One, gains understanding, gains knowledge. Now that's very similar to the beginning, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, the beginning of knowledge. So it's not that far from it. But I just wanted to throw it out there because I just ran across it. And it's that next part. And it says, that for the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. This Holy One. Well, Holy One is actually a phrase that is applied to God. The Holy One of Israel. Right? So it could be just saying the exact same thing twice. Fear of the Lord is beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Lord, of the Holy One. There's knowledge and understanding. That's fine. Probably what it means. But a Christian could look at that and say, I bet you that's talking about Jesus. I bet you the first part's talking about God and the second part's talking about Jesus. Again, there's all these prophecies and verses in the Old Testament that point towards the coming of Messiah. This could be one. Now, I am not saying that every Christian who looks at a verse automatically understands its full implications. On this particular one, it's not without a certain merit. Why do I say that? Because in Acts, I don't have it. Acts 13:35, it states, they're talking about Jesus rising from the dead, and it says, you will not let your Holy One see decay, quoting a psalm from the Old Testament, Psalm of David. So in the Old Testament, there's a psalm, it says, you will not let your Holy One see decay, and New Testament interpreters interpret that verse, which says Holy One, as Jesus. Acts chapter 13. So clearly, could this be a verse that talks about both God and Jesus in the Old Testament? Possibly. I said, I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but if someone brings it up, I can see how you could come to that conclusion. There's another fun one. Proverbs 10:19. Where there are many words, sin is unavoidable, but the one who controls his lips is prudent. Now, I don't think it's talking about you have to have only like 3 words per sentence. How you doing today? I am fine, period. Was there anything wrong with including a little bit of extra information? Had a rough week, but I'm doing better. You can include some extra information. I don't think this is a command for the shortest possible response always. But I think I do understand what it means. I mean, some people just like to include all sorts of things you don't need to know. Right? We'll get back to that. But a good way that a few more words is important and not necessarily sinful is, I suppose, you want a direction somewhere. You pull up out front, you want directions, you're looking for something. And I say, 2 blocks over, down, turn left, down, halfway down the street, there's what you're looking for. But I could include some instructions. I could include some extra things. I could say, when you get to the corner, you'll see a large building with white with red trim, turn right. Go down through several lights, but when you see a McDonald's, the place you're looking for is next to it. Now, those are some very helpful extra words that were inserted into the sentence. I don't think you have to shoot for a word count. Why? Because there's people out there who always take these things to extremes. Though I do think I understand what it's talking about. Some people will spend a great deal of time explaining and telling things to impress. Stories of how they conquered this or what they did. I'm always impressed when someone spends a lot of time talking about the olden days, which is fine. I mean, you had some great olden days, that's great, but are you doing anything else since then? What about the now? The now. Someone who spends a great deal of time talking to you and with flattery, maybe trying to sell you something, right? Maybe a con man. Maybe somebody with not your best intent, and yet there's plenty of words, so there's an application with a lot of words. Sin is not absent. Someone boasting and proudful and arrogant, sin is not very absent. Sometimes people just talk about themselves a lot, right? Don't even give you a chance to butt in. In that case, pride is very clearly there. They are, geocentric to the, egocentric to the universe. It's all about them. The world revolves around them, we say. Well, in that case, clearly, with all the many words, sin is present. Sin is unavoidable. A thought that comes to mind when I'm talking about this is this quote: "Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. And small minds discuss people." Eleanor Roosevelt. Moving on, just to some of these things. And you don't spend an hour talking about these things necessarily, but when I read some of these, if they're working on you like they work on me, you have to go, huh. You start thinking about life's applications. Either you've done it wrong, you've done it right, but you should read these things and just have a little moment of reflection. Here's one verse, Proverbs 13, verse 1. "A wise son responds to his father's discipline, but a mocker doesn't listen." Very similar to our earlier verse, but this one is a father and son dynamic. Why? Because of the dynamic. Your father is your superhero. He's your mentor. And of course, a lot of people nowadays don't have a decent idea of this father figure. And hopefully you can learn from someone else, but not always the case nowadays. But he's the lawgiver. He's the authoritarian. He can open up any bolt with a twist of his wrist when you can't. Amazing things a father can do. But as you get older and start, feeling a little, the friction begins because it's his way versus your way. He says he knows what's right. And I've heard many people eventually say, "My father was right." Now they had to go down life a bit further, and they're thinking about different things Dad said they didn't listen to. And looking back, and again, not maybe silly things, maybe things on investment, maybe things on, what car not to buy, whatever. They have to say, "My father was right." But mockers don't listen to him at all. Why? Because they think they know what's best, just like the mockers from the earlier passage. And on this dynamic of, there's other verses on this dynamic of parents, children, fathers, sons. Proverbs 13:24. "The one who will not use the rod hates his son, but the one who loves him disciplines him diligently." Now, we've heard, the more modern version, "Spare the rod, spoil the child." And I am not, now the rod is the idea of taking a stick and hitting them on the back. Now, while we don't use that particular method too much today, there's not a lot of internal organs back there. You're not disfiguring people. It's just a little bit north of the target most of us aim for when raising our children, or used to. I say used to because myself and other people who've gotten a little long in life here, got a little gray, have noticed a big shift on the way children behave in public. I kind of amen. I mean, that's right. Yeah. What has happened? Well, I don't know. I do know what I think of when the kid's doing that, tuning them up a little bit. Now, again, you don't even have to hit them. You have to do something that gets their attention. This is not the appropriate behavior. That could be taking away their favorite toy. That could be, their favorite dessert. That could be going to dessert right afterwards and eating it in front of them and saying, "Why don't I get one?" Because the way you acted back there. There must be some way of getting the point across. But what I'm seeing happening, and everybody else in the room apparently, is you're in the cereal aisle of Walmart or wherever you go, and some kid is just grenaded. He's all over the place. He's telling mom what to do. The language coming out of his mouth, the attitude, are you even 6 years old? I mean, how is this possible? And they're just, the parent, almost embarrassed, and now, Timmy, now, Timmy. And 5 minutes later, now, Timmy. Restaurants, this strange phenomenon happens. It's saying here, if you are not willing to discipline them, you hate them. Why are you hating them? And you don't. Because you're not helping them what's best for them. Learning right from wrong. Learning there's an okay way to behave and not. Learning the world doesn't revolve around you are very important lessons to learn. Learning how you behave affects other people, and you should think about being considerate. All these things are wonderful things to teach your children. And apparently, not being taught too terribly much. And you're hating your child. You're setting them up for a big disappointment in real life, because real life ain't going to work that way. Coworkers aren't going to watch you melt down and just go, oh, gee, we'll just stand here and watch you for a while. Coworkers have a way often saying, well, get over it. Grow up. Because they can say that because they don't know you well. Someone who knows you better may try to be more gentle, but try to say the same thing. Well, you had this problem before. Maybe you could work past it. They try to help. But here is this thing. You're setting them up for failure. But the one who loves him disciplines him diligently. The one who loves their child disciplines them diligently. It's not just about discipline. Like, every day, walk past your kid and give them a whack. If you don't know what for, they will. There's that thought. Some people have that thought, right? I'm not saying that. It says diligently, regularly. You're on focus. You're consistent. We took classes years ago for foster parenting. And you're talking about bringing kids into your home who've been raised in the most horrible of situations. And how do you even deal with them? One of the things we were taught was consistency. And that if a toddler or a young person screams, throws themselves on the ground, and gets their way, once every 10, 15 times, they're going to try every time. You have to be consistent. No means no. And again, it's going to be a fight. I'm not going to say it's not. How much of a fight? Depends on the kid. How much discipline is it going to take? Depends on the kid. What do you have to do? How much stuff do you have to take away? You have to find something that works, but it can happen, and we were instructed to do so. And the key was, whatever you set the line, make it the line. I kind of see that, saying that here. Diligently. You discipline them diligently. Moving along, Proverbs 14:12. There is a way that seems right to a person, but its end is the way of death or destruction or whatever translation it is. I'm kind of curious. Yeah. So, Yeah, 14:12. Did I skip it? Okay. I checked it, and he checked it too, so I blame Gwen. Could have been us. There is a way that seems right to a person, but its end is the way of death. Don't even have to spend much time talking about this. If you've had any friends, loved ones, yourself, your teenage years, whatever, you chase after things, and they're going to kill you. They can kill you just in this lifetime, emotionally, intellectually. You can ruin your health. And I'm talking about just the party lifestyle, or even people who chase after extreme sports. There's YouTube videos of guys always doing crazy stunts till one day they stop posting videos because they didn't make it. They didn't make it. Was that one guy famous for going up the top of tallest skyscraper and just standing there? He doesn't make videos anymore. And what does it say here? It seems right. It seems like a good idea. And it's not. Sometimes my parents or my friends' parents were like, what are you guys going to do? What are you going to do once you get there? Well, what's going to happen? They're looking at, we're just happy to, hey, so there's a party at Joe's house. Let's go. Who? But they want to know more. They want to know more about the destination. And what do you think you're going to do? And sometimes we didn't have a good answer. Why? Because it sounded good, but we hadn't thought about it very much. And where was it going to lead us? Where was it going to lead us? You can live your whole life relatively moral. Leave out God completely. It can lead to death. Proverbs 15:1. A gentle answer, a gentle word, turns away anger, but a harsh word stirs up wrath. So, two things can happen. It starts off with anger. Anger's coming towards you. You can respond to it gently, or you can respond to it in kind with anger or wrath. And it fuels the fire. Well, what about that? Oh, yeah, well, what about that? Oh, yeah, and it just grows and grows. Push turns into shove. It can be both physical or just more and more words, more and more language, more and more contempt, more and more. And it just grows and snowballs. And it's saying here, you can respond in kind, but to me, You can respond anger to anger. And I'm not saying every single time someone says something harsh to you, you have to instantly speak back kindly. Clearly, not every biblical character did. But more often than not, you may be better off starting off slow. You can always get angry later on down the conversation, but try to diffuse it at first, with a kind word. Hey, what's going on? What's the problem? I was furious one day. And someone said something, I was just livid. But instead of saying, what's wrong with you? Who do you think you are? Which would, of course, they said, is everything going okay? You're not acting yourself. It hit me like a 2x4. You know what? I am having a bad time. Whatever it was. Health concerns, financial concerns, life in general, children acting up, I forget which one it was that particular time, but it affects you. And the person using the kind words up front, not only it diffused everything, it helped me kind of work through my issues. There's something wrong, as opposed to just firing back. Proverbs 15:16. Better a little fear of the Lord than great treasure with turmoil. Don't have to talk about it long. Now, great treasure sounds like fun. I mean, if I had a big chunk of cash, all the crazy stuff I would do, maybe I'd have a fleet of GTOs. I'd have a different color for each day of the week. I don't know. I'd certainly like to see the Holy Land, not just a frivolous thing. But it says here that it has side effects to it, great treasure with turmoil. Well, the more you have, the more you have to work on keeping it. Now, the more you have, the more it can break down, the more it can fade away, the more it can get old and tarnish. The more you have, the more somebody else may want to take it from you, which can cause more security, more apprehension, more concern about this, more security cameras, more alarm systems. In fact, there was a long time where we didn't have it. Someone stole a TV in a house, I would have thanked them, would have given me a reason to go buy a new TV. They were still working, the big old fat ones, so I didn't have a new TV, but other people were getting little thin jobs, and I kind of wanted one, but mine were still working, I would have been happy if someone stole one of those things. And of course, you can't give those things away, so nobody was going to steal it. But here there's strings attached to it. Even around here, every light we put in is one more light to check on and make sure it doesn't burn out. Every door is another door lock and key that can act up. It just keeps going and going and going. Everything we put in the garden, every statue, this is another one to watch out for, and it's more concern, and turmoil can come from wealth. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe the Bible. But if you go online and start looking at the way some rich people's kids act, the way some Hollywood stars' kids act and act up, and the problems these guys are at the top of their game. They get paid millions for doing a movie and vacation in the Caymans or whatever. And yet their lives are spiraling out of control. So clearly, with the great treasure came turmoil. Just as true today as it was back then. Skip down to 16:9. A person's heart plans his ways, but the Lord determines his steps. There's that heart word used again for who you really are. You plan your way. The big course, I'm going to go that way. I want to be this when I'm 25. I want to get this position in my career. I want a vacation here. I mean, you can make all sorts of plans. Long term, a goal, a direction. You're going to point your sails and head to the horizon. You got it all figured out. But it says here, the Lord directs the steps. The Lord directs the steps. Where'd it go? So, long term or in the distance, you're thinking about things, but in the here and now, in the details, the Lord is directing and determines the steps. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time explaining how exactly this works. In fact, the longer I try to explain it, the more confusing it could be. I will tell you that most every seasoned senior Christian will read this and go, that's about right. They will look at the course of their lives, the highs, the lows, the rights, the lefts, and they will see for all their planning, things like that, Lord was very involved in the steps that got him to here, or the steps that stopped him from going there. So again, this is something I don't know if everyone would get, but most Christians with any experience sounds about right. Verse 17, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a difficult time. Well, this is, which friends are the true friends? The ones who hang out with you during the bad times. Like a brother it's talking about in difficult times. This is part of life where having some friends who truly love you even during the bad times, they have time for you even though when you're having a bad time, are you much fun to hang out with? Not necessarily. No. And they're willing to do it. Now, I don't know how many of them you get, but a true brother, a true friend can be life-saving during these difficult times. You need help, and a true friend will help you. I got to throw this one in there. Proverbs 17:22, and I'll speed things up. A joyful heart is a good medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones. So a good spirit, a good medicine is your attitude, a joyful heart, And the contrast, and most Proverbs do that. They'll contrast one point in verse with another, or they'll make the same point twice to really drill it in. That's one of the standard schemes to a proverb. Contrast 2 points, or make a point and make it again for double emphasis. Compare that in your readings. A broken spirit dries up the bones. Dried up, is it cancerous? Is that what it's talking about? It's a cancer. A broken spirit is a cancer. Can that affect you? Can that affect your health? Well, this is old stuff these Jewish people wrote down 1,000 years before Christ. So I Googled it. I think I was on Bing, which is Microsoft's search engine. And you can Google it and it'll bring up web pages, but then it'll start to fill in text as the AI is trying to give you a paragraph of explanation. Not just pointed to someone else's page, but a summation of information from around the internet instantly brought together with this AI technology. Here's what it said. Yes, your attitude can affect your health. According to a study by Harvard, unknown college, having a positive outlook on life and aging may help you live longer and stay healthier. Why does it include aging? Because the older you get, the more things fall off, as I like to call it. Wear out, wear down. Can that affect your attitude? Why, it certainly can. But it's saying having a positive outlook on life and aging may help you live longer and stay healthier. Another study by Consumer Health News suggests positive attitudes about health can ward off mental distress and provide important protection against disease. It's also important to note that a positive attitude can improve outcomes and life satisfaction across the spectrum of conditions, including traumatic brain injury, stroke, and brain tumors. Well, I don't need modern science to tell me what I've already read before. And again, to me, that was written down, 3,200 years ago, give or take? Just as true today as it was back then, but at least now science confirms it. Verse 18:24, one with many brothers may be harmed, but there was a friend who stays closer to a brother. Very similar to the other verse we just read. And I was at a high school graduation many years ago here in town. And the guy could have said, you're out there, go seize the day, you're a master of your own ship, set your sails and go conquer get out there. The guy could have said all those things. But this was a minister who was asked to speak. I don't think they do that anymore. Here was a minister asked to speak at the high school graduation, and he said something on the lines of, students, as far as real friends go, you will have 2 to 3 in your lifetime. Cherish them, protect them. What's he talking about? A verse just like this one, Proverbs 18:24. One with many friends may be harmed. Why? Because all your friends aren't around when you need them. but there is a friend who stays closer than a brother, much like that passage we just read. And if you have one or two of those, overlook some of their flaws, and if they overlook some of yours, you have a great chance of survival. Here's another one. I'm just going to go through these very fast. Don't have to even change to them. But start a youth on his way. When he's older, he will not depart from it. Train a child up in the way he should go. And when he's older, he will not depart. There's things you're supposed to teach them early on. Right and wrong, which I said somehow is getting forgotten. But if you do that, when they're older, it still helps them along their way. Another one, iron sharpens iron, and one person sharpens another. When you're working with tools, a sharp tool is going to get the work done half the time. I think that's a proverb also. Sharp tools make the work quicker, easier. Mowing the lawn, doing the wood, cutting things in your kitchen, whatever. And we get out of the habit of doing it. But when you do, suddenly it's like, oh, this is much easier now. But you got to be careful you don't take off too much extra on your hands because you're not used to the new sharpness. Well, it's not talking about sharpening. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. What does that mean? You can learn from other people. You can be sharpened, but it also implies friction, sparks. You're not always going to see eye to eye and just go, oh, that's wonderful. Let's go have tea. But in time, because of your interactions with other people, you learn, you grow, you increase your knowledge, your wisdom. What happens if you don't have any friends, anyone who says anything contrary to you? Well, you're not sharpening anything. And we live in a day and an age where you can do that now. Because whatever your opinion, whatever your thing, there's a web page to help you feel perfectly content in your beliefs. You don't want to believe people landed on the moon, web page is full of it. You want to believe the earth is flat, web page is full of it. And then there's one here about the one who conceals his sin. I'm almost done there, guys. I see some people working on the vittles. The one who conceals his sin will not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces him will find mercy. Confessing your sin. Now, I'm not saying we have to have little wooden boxes and go in there and talk through a screen. I'm going to say that whoever confesses and renounces him will find mercy. That you keep things bottled up inside so long, especially the things you did wrong, it eats at you. And if you tell someone, it could free you. But also else, another point, if you tell someone, now you have someone who knows your deepest, darkest sin. Horrible thought. But if you get that far, now what you have is accountability. I think you'll find in this church, if you ever sat down long enough to know people, someone might say, oh, that's your sin? Yeah, I know a guy like that, or I've been there myself. I've had those thoughts, those desires, those temptations. Not instant judgment. How dare you? Well, that can happen. Some people are sure of themselves. And yet, confessing. I found all sorts of web pages that talked about the benefits of confessing and telling a person we call them psychiatrists and psychologists now. It's a whole new field of study in the last couple hundred years. However, its main points were already written down 3,200 years ago. And then, I wish I had more time. Proverbs 31, I got to talk about this. Proverbs 31, it starts off, King Lemuel learned these things from his mother. Right around verse 10, it talks about this virtuous woman, this proverbial wife, this godly, noble character of a woman. I think it gets abused. I think it gets abused because a man could say, hey, it says right here, the wife's supposed to do this, and the wife's supposed to do that, and the wife's supposed to do this. A Christian man could kind of, use it as a weapon against their wife. I don't think that's actually the thing, because I want you to look at this, Proverbs 31:10, down towards the bottom, Proverbs 31:10. Who can find a wife of noble character? She is far more precious than jewels. Well, who's this talking to? The husband looking for a wife. Right? So all these instructions, while they can be a nice list of things to look at and compare to, reality is it isn't supposed to be you need to be this and you need to be this. It's instructions to a man looking for a wife, and this is what you're looking for. A little bit different there. It says she is far more precious than jewels. a wife of noble character. It doesn't say beauty, it doesn't say height, it doesn't say thing, which leads me to the interesting thing about how people select their mates. How people select their dates. Why do I say dates? Because people I know who dated eventually got married. Funny how that works. And there's some funny things. Now, what's your idea of the perfect date, the perfect physical specimen? Man, woman, depending on what side of the fence you're on there, you're dating a guy, right? Let's suppose you want a strapping example of manhood. You want a gentleman who's over 6 feet tall. 14.5 of the U.S. population only qualify as being over 6 foot tall. Immediately, out of the sea of fishes, all these possibilities, you've already limited yourself to 14.5, right? Then, let's suppose you're fairly tall, but like a taller woman. Well, only 1% in America are over 6 foot tall. So you're already hindering your chances there. How about, I'll wait and see. Well, these were instructions on what to look for in a wife. How soon should you start thinking about these things? Well, when you start reading this, I don't care how old you are, let the Bible and the wisdom do some talking to you. There's nothing wrong with thinking about some of these things when you're 15, 16. You're heading down that road. These things will pop up. It says, a Pew research from 2023 has found that 63% of all men under 30 describe themselves as single. Well, there's a lot of fish in the sea, but only 34% of women of the same age. Well, now you have a problem. Much less fish in the sea. And the reason I bring these things up is what do people look for? And they're not looking for the noble characters, the kindness, the sincerity, the diligence. They're focused on helping, providing, working. There's all these things a virtuous woman does. This should be your checklist as opposed to how they fill out a bikini or, biceps or, the strong jawline and little cleft chin, or dimples or whatever. What are people looking for? And then in the same chapter, talking about this beautiful woman, towards the end, it says this. Charm is, Proverbs 31:30. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting. Charm is deceptive. Someone can be very charming, but much like I said, a salesman can be very charming. A con man can be very charming. In fact, an attractive person with other sex may be very charming, but they may not have your best interest in mind. You may simply be an object of their desire for a moment. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting. How fleeting? Well, I didn't even hit my prime till my 20s. And by 25, I noticed things were thinning. That's pretty quick. Fleeting, to run away, to vanish, a vapor. I noticed a few gray hairs in my late 20s, and everybody else noticed them by my early 30s. Beauty is fleeting. Can some people look younger? Yeah, genetics help. Can some people turn to assistance from doctors and ointments and such things? Sure. Sometimes it actually works pretty good. Some of those Hollywood stars, get a little trim and looks pretty good. Others don't even look like the Hollywood star I remember. It's fleeting. But the woman who fears the Lord will be praised. Technically, it made me think of this was talk about beauty being fleeting. On many occasions, I've seen two brothers or two sisters who look so much alike you would not doubt that they are brother and sister or brothers or sister, and yet one is the handsome one and one is the average one. One is the pretty one and one is the plain one. And yet they look so much alike you don't doubt they're sisters or brothers. Why? Something so simple as the way the cheekbone's a little more in or out, or the lips slightly more fuller or less, or whatever, the eyes are slightly more, whatever the case may be, they look so much alike. They're sisters. And yet one is pretty and one is plain. How fleeting. And then what happens? You get a little older and your eye droops a little bit or whatever. No. It is fleeting. So what is important? I think of the Martin Luther King thing. The I have a dream speech. I have a dream that someday my children will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Well, that's what this is talking about, the content of your character. So we're talking about the wisdom, we're talking about these verses. And there's a verse in the New Testament I'd like to bring to you. We're talking about, 1,000 years before the New Testament's time. The New Testament verse is 1 Corinthians 1:30. Paul, writing to the church at Corinth, which is in Greece, 1 Corinthians 1:30, he says this, "It is because of him that you are in Jesus." Him meaning God. He's just got through talking about God uses not the weak, or not the strong, but the weak. He doesn't use always the rich, but he uses the poor. And if you read through the Bible, God uses all sorts of people, rich and poor, famous, educated, not famous, not educated, royalty, non-royalty. He's an equal opportunity kind of employer, I guess. It is because of him, God, that you are in Jesus Christ, who has become for us wisdom from God. What kind of wisdom from God? Well, it says in the verse. That is our righteousness, holiness, and redemption. We're talking about life here on earth. And some very important things. You might call these churchy words. Righteousness. But don't get me wrong, when you run across a person out and you broke down on the side of the highway and someone rolls up, you hope they are a righteous individual. It talks about holiness, how we live our lives before the eyes of God. It talks about nothing more important than redemption. How do we get brought back to God? What is it saying? You want the wisdom from God? See Jesus. Let us pray. Gracious Lord, I thank you for this time, this hour. I pray for our upcoming potluck and fellowship and all the food and the hands that prepared it. You bless us abundantly, dear Lord. I thank you again for your word. May we read it and be amazed at your message. In Jesus' name, amen.